Just give me a sign.
You're good to go.
Okay, good evening. It is our June Health and Human Services Committee meeting. It's Tuesday, June 28th. Okay, and it's summer and beautiful out. So we're going to try to have a worthwhile meeting, and given who we have with us tonight, I know it will be. We're going to first look at the issues of that we need to address as a part of the district needs statement and budget priorities. We're going to have Ebony Webb, who's not on yet, from Help 107, and I just saw her. Okay, and Karen Jorgensen. There's so much, I'll have to say the words later because of the great esteem I hold her in, who is the director of Valley Lodge and with Westside Federation of Senior and Supportive Housing for as long as Valley Lodge has existed. So without any further ado, we're going to, I'm going to call on Beverly. Okay, let's just introduce who's on. Seema, good to see you. Okay, Beverly Donahue, good evening. Robert, okay, there you are. Madge, Doug, of course, Max, and Keith Prince from Danny O'Donnell's office. How you doing? Okay, and I mentioned our guests. So Beverly, would you like to begin?
Thank you, Shelley. I'm here only for a few minutes, and Roberta Seamer, who heads our Budget and Strategy Committee, will be joining a little bit later. She was held up, so she asked me to begin. When we thought we had July meetings, we had a very different schedule for preparing the budget priorities and district needs for each committee. Now that it's clear we do not necessarily have a July meeting, much of that work needs to be done kind of offline through emails and the like. But thank you, Shelley, for providing us with a few minutes to maybe lay out a framework for that now. We need to see your priorities as we begin writing by the end of July, since it takes a lot to get this document all pulled together within the timeline provided by the Department of City Planning, so that we would hope by mid to late July to receive from you, with the blessing of your community, with your contacts and your members here in the committee, what you want to put forth as your revised priorities on capital and expense. Roberta, on I think it was about the 15th of June, emailed the entire committee with a reminder as to what your last year's priorities looked like. And I believe that you've also had shared with you the responses that were received from OMB about what's already kind of done or completed, or in any case, the agency responses to the specific items that you put forth. So some of those may fall off your list because they've been essentially dealt with, like some of the COVID training that you had asked for example. And you may have, in the course of the meetings that you've held in the last year and the resolutions that you've passed, come up with some more very specific items. I just want to again review quickly what we view now, having learned a lot in the last year, as to what's an effective item. If it's specific, if it's located at a specific location, that's good. If you have letters of support from either agencies or nonprofits who share your conviction about the priority of the item, that helps tremendously. And if you have data to back up what the item is that you're requesting, that's immensely helpful too. Last year, when we did the district needs, 2 out of 3 of them essentially reflected the needs of your committee. The highest priority that the community board put forward was health, was food insecurity. And then I think the third one was related to social services as well around the homeless issues. So you again play a huge role in essentially reflecting what our board really values and wants to see moved. So again, this is a list from last year. It's a good starting point, but you may want to take items off. You may want to add, additional items. I note that the only capital ones you had were really related to NYCHA or the dedicated health clinic or the
Safe haven.
the safe haven. So those items may still be around for the expense budget items. I think there'll be a little more flux. And I just would ask that you figure out a system for your committee to share information back and forth between now and late July so that we can get started on formulating and pulling together the information needed for the entire district needs statement and budget priorities as a whole. So if there's any questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, I will see you all later.
Okay. I don't see any questions, but I want to thank you. This is very clear. One thing we're going to be able to do, since last year we had 6 of the top 10 expense and 3 of the top 10, we have at least one resolution which we put exact figures into in advance. We have to do a little more work on some of the others, but we know where to go on it. And I'm going to speak to committee members, and we'll discuss this towards the end of the meeting, how we're going to proceed to get that specific information, which makes so much sense, because if you're asking for something and it's nice, but it's general and there's no price tag and there's no agency that's going to implement it, it's kind of, not something that is going to be picked up easily by our elected officials and carried to budget. So what you're saying makes so much sense, and we'll try to do our best.
Okay, so with that, I will leave you and thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you, Beverly. Okay, so moving right along, what I projected just before were what we got, what the board passed last year, which many of the things were things we had proposed. But towards the end of the meeting, we'll finish up by talking about that. Ebony, hi. I've been fortunate to know Ebony and work on the Community Advisory Board for Help 107. Just a little background for those who may not be familiar. I don't know if it was 13 or 14 years ago when a shelter came to 107th Street. For the first few weeks, there was a lot of nervousness, discontent, but ultimately it was a women's shelter. The provider was Help USA, and it worked out very well with the women being integrated to a large extent into the community, a part of the work of the local block association, the local church. Many of the women ended up working in the community. It's an employment shelter, and worked out very well. We were very upset here at Community Board 7 when the women's shelter was going to be disbanded. We tried fighting it. Nevertheless, eventually it was in the plan, and a men's shelter was brought in. Of course, right away there was the same type of angst, but with the good work of Help USA and the staff on 107th Street, and also the cooperation of the local community on 107th Street, again, wanting to know how can they help, what can they do to make it, work better for the people who are there. So with that background, I'm going to ask Ebony to tell us what's going on right now. And I have to say that I have great respect for Ebony and for the agency because of the good work they've done with the community. So Ebony.
Good evening, everyone. So a couple of months ago, Help USA learned that we were not going to be able to renew the lease for the building at 237 West 107th Street. So we began the process of getting emergency vouchers for all of the residents in the building, and slowly but surely finding them placements in their preferred boroughs at various other homeless shelters. So as of right now, there are no clients, no residents in the building. The moving company came Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and moved the bulk of the furniture from the building. And the last day that we will actually be occupying the building is Thursday, June 30th. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully, the move was quiet and didn't disturb too much of the neighborhood. I really enjoyed being a part of the cab. It was my first experience. This is my first time being an executive director. I was at 107th for just a year before the building closed down. I do know that Help USA is scouting another building in the area, actually. So the, paperwork is being done for that. Unfortunately, it couldn't or will not happen before Thursday, of course. So we had to find other placements for our staff within other Help USA sites. And, some decided to leave the agency altogether. So yeah, that's where we are right now.
Yeah,
Shelley, I'd like to ask a question.
sure, please, Robert.
Thank you for the summation. It adds for me clarity. You see, the thing that happens, I find, is that we get deeply engaged in the clusters of activities to improve people's lives. So there at your location, there were four different things. We have street meetings, we had this and that, wonderful community activism. And then we put something solid in place where everyone was a stakeholder. We all agreed this is what we want. Suddenly it disappears. Now, I'm not asking you to resolve that or suggest reasons for the politic of the thing, but we know that's what it is. But can you, just for my clarification, tell me what we substituted for what, and what's coming in now that we were not headed for, other than the male to female shift? The female
to male.
Yeah. Other than that,
Woman to man.
what's new for the community? And I'm not going to ask you the heavily political question, why the shift to just male only, because that is the dividing question. But what are we getting now exactly, just so I can get my head clear?
So that I cannot actually tell you. We have no clue what the landlord is going to do with the building once we are out. I do know that the building has 2 tenants that will remain there. after we leave. But as for the plans for the building after Help USA moves out, I have no clue.
All right, yeah. Well, I get it, really. But if we can kind of incorporate that question, Shelley, into our discussion with whomever,
Mhm.
the answer will sneak out.
Okay, we're going to keep our eyes and ears and nosiness close to the situation because Help USA has been a wonderful provider, and I don't think it was their decision to go from a women's shelter to a men's shelter. It was something that was thrust upon them. I think we have to have, and I attempted to bring someone here from DHS, Department of Homeless Services, to share some insights. I know some people there, but they just couldn't make it tonight, okay? But I think we need to engage them, okay, on a regular basis, because we want to be, supportive of a supportive community board. We want to be supportive of the community and the people who are brought to the community. And if we don't know what's going on, it's always a feeling like it's something's being thrust on us that may not be right, or certainly we're not being given a chance to help, okay, to be supportive. I believe that CAB's Community Advisory Board should be formed before people enter, okay? There should be community involvement. We've done that in certain situations in Wisfish before, and it was very successful, particularly when there was discontent in the community. And most of that turned to support when people were at the table and they want to know usually they want to know, how can I help the people there? What can I do to make this work? And the people on 107th Street were very, I'm sure Ebony would agree, with dissatisfaction with certain things. They came around and they opened their hearts. Okay. So Ebony, really thank you for coming on tonight. And I'm sure we have a future together.
Hopefully so.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's to Danny. Okay.
I will let him know.
Okay. So, okay. I am in awe. Well, we also have Paul Freitag, our executive director from Wisfish here. Okay. I am in awe for decades of Karen Jorgensen. What she's managed to do, which was something we hadn't seen before in a way that hadn't been done before, bringing people who had mental health challenges, homelessness, and everything that goes with it through a system, most ending up with permanent housing. And every year there's the graduates come back. What does that tell you? That family was created, okay, that a permanent connection. And it's so different than so much or most of what we hear. So I have the highest respect for Karen and all the work she does, and Valley Lodge, which she was at from the very beginning. Okay, so she created Valley Lodge in many ways. So Karen, I'd like to invite you to join us and to give us some of that background and tell us what's happening now.
Okay, well, thank you. And I think Paul Freitag has some beautiful slides too.
Right. So I
I'm
think what
not
we're going
sure.
to, yeah, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to actually show a few slides just so everybody can really be oriented to the project, which will take, 2 minutes. And then afterwards, I'll hand it over to Karen, who really will present the history and kind of really what Valley Lodge is doing. So let me share my screen. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so we'll do this. That's not what I do. Hold on. Okay. Okay, so let me start the slideshow here. Okay, so everybody should be seeing a nice slide of the entire building. Is that right, Shelley?
Yes, that's the
Okay, great.
entire building on 108th Street.
Okay, so just to give a real history of the so this project, which we call Wistfish at West 108, pending another name, which hopefully it will happen very shortly in the future, is on West 108th Street between Amsterdam and Columbus. It takes up, over half of the north side of the street. It's a very big building, and it's a very unique building because it constitutes both permanent affordable housing for families, supportive housing for seniors, and then also Valley Lodge, which is a shelter designated specifically for formerly homeless seniors. So here is the site. You can see, to what extent it's a very large site, taking up a large portion of the block right across the street from Booker T. Washington Middle School. And these are pictures of Valley Lodge prior to our redevelopment. So, part of the, I think, really important element of this project was that Valley Lodge, the shelter for seniors, had existed on the site for 30 years prior to this redevelopment. And so, the goal of this redevelopment was to actually take this building, which was, really needed, needed to be completely redone, and add to it permanent supportive housing. The other very important thing about this project was that there was a lot of discussion at the point that we were doing this redevelopment of really integrating shelters into supportive housing, so that you have a combination of both shelter and transitional housing with permanent supportive housing. So, here is the project as it stands today. One of the things I love about the project is that our goal was to have, essentially just one door that you would walk through in order to go to both the shelter and the permanent housing. That was our conception from the very beginning. Of course, as it went along, the city agency said, oh, no, you can't possibly do that. You really need to have two separate addresses. So in fact, we have 145, which is the permanent housing, and 143, which is shelter. But you walk through those doors and you end up in exactly the same lobby. So you have essentially a reception desk, which is between both of those doors, and you arrive in what is really one building. So this is looking, towards the Valley Lodge side. Here is the communal dining facility, which, essentially serves 3 meals a day for all the residents of Valley Lodge. Here is the backyard of the building, which once again, it is continuous behind the entire building, both for the residents of both the permanent and the transitional housing. This is a view into one of the shelter rooms. Karen can talk more about this, but most of the shelter rooms are for 3 or 4 residents. The idea is that provides a sort of, good fit between, transitional housing, but still respecting a certain amount of privacy for the residents. And there you have it. So now I will hand it over to Karen, who will really fill us in entirely about the project.
Well, thank you. And I just want to also thank Community Board 7. Some of you were there during those many long ULERP meetings. And I thank you for supporting us so we could move back to 108th Street. And what's very exciting is that we are the block now. So, and I also recently found out that the building on the northeast corner of Amsterdam and 108th had been a Till building. And it's been recently totally renovated and is now an HDFC low and moderate income co-op. And the people who developed it moved back the tenants that were there before and allowed them to buy in at $250 an apartment. So it really, this whole block is now changed into some kind of permanent affordable housing. And that's really the goal of what we're doing. Now, some of you may have heard my spiel about Valley Lodge before, but I'll just launch in. Valley Lodge opened in May of '88. And it was really Laura Jervis, who was our executive director, was long concerned about the plight of older homeless people. And so this plan was in the development stages from 1982 until we opened in '88. And we were the first building that was actually designed, developed, and renovated to be a shelter within the city system run by a not-for-profit organization. Because before, some of you may not know, that most of the city shelters were in large armories where people had beds on the drill floor, and including the Fort Washington Armory that had 900 beds on the drill floor. And I was there and it was horrible. So now the state has decided that no one can have more than 200 beds in a shelter. We now have the capacity of 110 beds. For 63 men and 47 women. We are not full yet because during the pandemic, we had to downsize. And I'm also happy to say that part of the loss of our current census is that 35 of our shelter clients were able to move into the apartment building on site because they met the criteria for the two different supportive housing programs there. So that is also a wonderful thing, so we can follow them. Our program is specifically for people 50 and over, and we are part of the New York City shelter system, but we are quite different from most of the shelters because we are one of only 4 shelters that is allowed to screen all applicants before they come to us. And so we take that very seriously, and we have people coming to us for orientation, tour, interview with a caseworker, and then lunch. And we carefully look to see who would fit into the building. And we're specifically looking for the oldest and the frailest elderly, especially now because we are totally accessible. This is so wonderful. We've never been in a building totally accessible with automatic doors as you go in, 2 working elevators that are brand new, and all kinds of handicapped accessible bathrooms. So this is very, very exciting, and we're able to accommodate the frail folks. When we first opened, most of the people coming to us were coming from these big shelters, and many of them were seriously mentally ill, especially the women. And the men often were folks with long histories of alcoholism and sometimes drugs. But over the years, we've seen many, many more people who are here for economic reasons. And their income just did not travel with the rent. Or they were someone who lived with mom all their lives, and then mom dies and they need help. So that's part of our I think what we're trying to do is to bring in those folks because we have such a great team that we are able to place them in housing. The other thing I could tell you about some of the staff that we have, but the other thing I'd like to talk about is the safety that we have. Because we screen and because we have an older population, we're very, very safe. And we do not have outside security guards. We do not have metal detectors or any kind of thing like that. We regard all of our staff sort of serve as informal security. We have a front desk, but everybody knows everybody And it's that kind of a building. And I think what you hear now is people are still afraid to go into the shelter system because they have to pass through intake and assessment before they can come to us. We are not allowed to take people in directly to us. And so that has been an issue that we have dealt with. And we currently now have many people who have been referred from local West Side places that we've been able to engineer into Valley Lodge through sort of a quick assessment process. So as Paul mentioned, we have shared rooms. We actually have one room for 2 people on each floor, but the rest of the rooms are for 3 and 4 people. Right now, we're not full. So we are recruiting, and we get people from referrals from the big shelter system, sometimes from other shelters or for the assessment shelters. And we also get a lot of people coming in from the community asking us for help. And that could include churches, synagogues, hospitals, whatever. We try to do our best. We interview people, and then we sort of try to engineer them into Valley Lodge. When we opened Valley Lodge, we planned it to be like our adult home at 74th Street. We wanted it to have the same loving care. So all of our meals are prepared on the premises, and they are fresh and delicious. We have program aides who help with escorts, personal care, whatever. We have shift supervisors on duty. We have medication management for people. We have a medical team from the Institute for Family Health, which is under Healthcare for the Homeless, that comes twice a week. We have a podiatrist twice a month. We have 3 psychiatrists that come different times during the week. So the whole, and we have a very fine social service staff with a clinical coordinator, 2 sort of assistant clinical coordinators, and about 8 social workers. And they really do all of the intensive case management, which includes getting people their benefits, getting people their documentation so that they can be eligible for all of the tax incentive housing, which is out there. Because the best supportive housing is usually funded by tax credits in part. And there's a very, very lengthy requirement for documents like birth certificate, social security card, things that people arrive without. And so in addition to that, we work on seeing if we can get them healthier, wealthier, and wiser. We get them to our med team. We encourage them to save money. And also in some cases, we get them into alcohol and substance abuse treatment programs. So that's, in the pre-pandemic days, we had a very robust activity program, because part of trying to do this work is, I think, to get people back into the feeling of the community. So we had some kind of, what would you call, a seasonal kind of thing every month. We had Martin Luther King tribute program, Black History Month tribute program, Women's History Month, Earth Day, an annual alumni party. Then we had November Arts Festival. We had a Halloween costume party, Thanksgiving Day dinner, New Year's Eve party, Christmas Eve party, all these, 3 Kings party, Kwanzaa, every possible thing you could have. We had the Juilliard School. We had Vocalese Cabaret. We had trips to the Mets game, the Yankees games. We had all of this stuff. Our choir even performed at not Yankee Stadium. They performed at Carnegie Hall, because we were the only choir they knew about at DHS. So when another choir came from Texas, they asked us to participate. So we had all of these things, and we really had to curtail them during the pandemic. And that was hard. I would say that WSFISH and the DHS did a great job during the pandemic. We have almost, I think, over 80% of our people are totally vaccinated and boosted. We've got a mask mandate. We do wellness checks 7 times a day upstairs, just to make sure people are okay. And if we have rapid testing, and if someone scores positive, they're immediately sent to an isolation hotel. I think the other thing I should tell you is that what we try to do is match each person with where they should be living if we think what they're capable of, and where and how they're going to fit into a particular unit. And I think that's been one of our successes, is trying to see, maybe somebody needs single room occupancy. Maybe somebody really can't manage themselves. They need an adult home. We have all of these. We have adult homes. We've got single room occupancy. We've got specialty buildings. We've got senior apartments. We've got it all. So we try to engineer our people into our own buildings. And right now we have 235 Valley Lodge alumni living in various WSFISH buildings, almost somebody in almost every WSFISH building. And we follow those people. And we do have this big anniversary. And you know, you're part of the Valley Lodge family. And we didn't have any anniversaries in the last couple of years because it was too dangerous. But we try to follow people. We tell them to call us if they run into trouble. We have followed a lot of people through their final days of health, and we bury a lot of people. So there is that sense that you become part of the Valley Lodge family, and we will, watch over you. We're very happy now that we're able to, we have a nice community room that we're able to offer to NA meetings that are going to be on site. We have 2 community NA meetings, one on Monday nights and one on Thursday nights. And these were meetings that were in other parts of the West Side. We also have our own AA meeting on Saturday, and we're about to have a new NA meeting just for women on Saturday afternoon. So that's something else that we take very seriously, is sobriety. And that's a very difficult thing for our people. So I think, I don't know if anyone has any questions or, yes.
Yeah,
Sarah.
hi, my name is Sara. It's great to hear about your programs. I recently found out that my daughter will be going to Booker T Middle School this fall, which is right across the street. So it's great to hear about everything that you're doing to help your residents and to engage with the community. And I'm so grateful for everything that you do. I'm wondering, I live much further south, so I don't know that much about the community, and I'm just starting to get engaged with the school. But, given that you are so close, do you ever do anything with Booker T, any kind of, intergenerational work or volunteering or anything like that?
Well, actually, in the old days, I should tell you, our position was, this was before we moved to be renovated. Our position was that no one should know we were on the block, because we wanted to make our presence not felt, because we felt, no one should be nervous about us. And so, but I do remember when we were going to be constructing, we did a number of collaborations with Booker T, including, I think, a special pie thing that was going on. Paul might know more.
Yeah,
about that.
so I can hop in. I mean, obviously, during the time that we were doing essentially the redevelopment of the block, we had a lot of interaction with Booker T. And so, I mean, our goal at that point was to stop trying to fly under the radar and to be much more a very engaged neighbor. And so I will say that I personally went to Booker T and actually led classes where we talked about what is affordable housing, why do we need affordable housing, how does the city actually support people who need housing. During construction, we couldn't let people on the site, but we actually had our contractor meet with a group of students out in front of the building and describe what was going on, what's the type of construction that's happening. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that we developed a very, very close relationship with Dr. Levinas, principal there. And we had monthly meetings all during construction with the community advisory board. And one of the challenges is that, this whole thing takes a very long time. And so you would in fact have a turnover of parents. And, and the parents that we'd already won over and felt like, oh, this is great, their kids would actually graduate and move on to high school, and we'd have a whole new crop of parents. And I remember that fairly late in the process, I went to a meeting with a new set of parents, and Dr. Levinas essentially stood in front of the group and said, what I want you to know is that every promise that WSFISH has made, they have stood by. So anything that they say, I promise you that they will stand up to it. And, and it's really always been our goal to make sure that, we engage with the neighbors and have really people appreciate why, they shouldn't fear the fact that Valley Lodge is on the block. They should actually welcome, Valley Lodge as representing neighbors that we want to have in every community.
I'll just say, I will be one of those new batch of parents in the fall. So I've got at least 3 years, and I've got a younger kid who might, I might have 5 years. So,
right.
Happy to be in touch and, help support however I can.
I think, Paul, didn't you say that at one point they tried to mitigate the noise when there were exams happening?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things that we did during the construction of the building was we had noise monitors on actually mounted on the building. And so at all points, any parent, anyone could, check and make sure that we weren't actually, creating way too much noise that the kids couldn't adjust to. That was never the case. But even with that, the fact that the construction wasn't so loud, we scheduled in advance that on major test days, we would do no construction. So, we really tried to work with the school to make sure that, that the new building we were building would not impact the kids as, they were going through their school day.
The other thing I think, Paul, you didn't mention was that there were other amenities that we brought to the community, including the free parking for the Central Park Ambulance Corps. And also we were able to build bathrooms for the playground. And my understanding is that those have just been approved with I think the Parks Department hasn't opened it yet. But because those bathrooms, which are outside of Valley Lodge, but will be available to the children using the playground. And I also heard that because there's bathrooms, then they'll be able to have a Parks Department attendant on the site. So that also represents a great, improvement to this block, because in the old days, it was like really dead, and then we would be in the center. Now we're the center of the block, and in the center we have a well-lit area. In case anyone is ever feeling nervous, they can simply walk in and ask for help, because it's a 24-hour facility. So there's always someone at the front desk.
I was also just at City Council at City Hall today testifying in support of Mark Levine's bill calling for more public restrooms. So you're giving me all the good stuff today. I love it. Thank you.
No, I have to give a shout out to Friends of Annabelle Villas Playground, which at the very beginning was a real support of our project. And, they were able to recognize that having a, bright, occupied, safe, affordable housing project next to their playground versus a blank wall of a parking garage, that had really no security associated with it was a much better deal. And then we were able to work with them and the Parks Department to make, as part of our, building the new building, the creation of new bathrooms for the playground.
And if you want to hear, this is very interesting. It's just an aside, but members of the public can really do important work. And I realize that we have 3 men in their late 60s, early 70s, now living in the apartment side of the building. And all 3 of them were brought in by a younger member of the community, a woman, each time a woman, who had befriended one of these folks that were on the street. And they, in one case, hooked them into a stabilization bed, but in the others just were following them. One had known the person from church, but they brought our attention to these folks, and we were able to bring them in. But they had sort of fallen off the cliff in a sense. One of them had stopped getting his Social Security payment at the General Post Office for something like 6 years, just stopped getting it. And eventually received $65,000 in back Social Security. Another one had suffered from cataracts and also probably alcohol issues, and had never realized that he could automatically get SSI at age 65 just by being a US citizen. And the third one was someone who was befriended by someone who lives in the neighborhood who knew him from church and was holding a pet of his in her apartment while he was waiting to be housed. And all of them were brought to our attention, and we were able to get them into Valley Lodge. And then, because they all needed special assistance, get them into our apartment side. So those are the kinds of things that make this job really great, because we can get people permanently housed and they're going to be safe. And because these buildings are, 40, 60 years of you can't sell them, right? 40, Paul, I think it's 40 or 60 years of.
Well, this one actually has permanent affordability, so it can never be sold. But
so, this is a wonderful thing, because they're not, and because most of these are based on a percentage of income. If somebody was working part-time and then stopped work, their rent would be adjusted. So they can't be thrown out unless, of course, they don't want to pay rent eventually. But so that's a very wonderful thing.
So you're hearing certain stories. I can tell you 10 more, okay, easily. But really, it's the culture that was developed by Karen and by Wisfish that enables these things to happen, because most places, the answer is we can't do it.
Yeah.
We'd like to help, but we can't. And the attitude here is we got to find a way, and whatever we can do to help someone.
And here's another one. This is fascinating. This guy came to us. He's about 73, and he was referred by another one of the clinics at All Angels Church. Institute for Family Health has a homeless clinic at All Angels. He was living in Blessed Sacrament Church during the day, because they opened it up. And at night, he was living at the #1 train station at Lincoln Center. And we were able to engineer him in, even though he went through a very scary time going to an assessment shelter in Brooklyn. But he's now here. But it's that kind of thing. But I think what we try to do is tell people, come here, look at this, and then we'll kind of work with you on getting you in here by, because you have to go through intake. But that's, and so most of the time when people come here, they like what they see and they're willing to, go through with the process. And I think we really can make a difference for people when they come here. I think our staff, we can be very proud of our entire staff. And we actually have 16 staff who've been here over 15 years. So we have a very, very high retention rate of staff, which means that our staff know our alumni and will let us know when things are going bad with somebody. So people know they have a home. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, we couldn't allow a lot of visiting. But hopefully, we hope, right, that something will break on that.
Okay, and any other questions or comments? Hi, Peter. Welcome.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Hi. I'll quickly say that this has been a tremendous benefit for the community. And Sara, you should come up and take a look. That block was garages. They would close up at night. Activities took place that you would not want to be around. And this is a huge change, and it's really positive. I'm really pleased that the community board did start an advisory board. The school was very much involved, and one of your Julian's dad was involved in it, and was there at most of the meetings. So just all of those things have happened, and Wissfish is just a great partner for the community, and has been really responsive and engaging. So this is a great thing. And I will say, Robert had asked a question earlier. I raised my hand earlier when Robert asked about the location on 107th Street. And I'll quickly say that is something's happened to my screen. But in any case, that is a mess where the landlords have a history of criminal activity and criminal, yeah.
Well, yes, Peter,
And
so I appreciate that comment because
they
involved
were
is
not,
no clue.
Okay.
yeah,
So-
I'm sorry, I can't tell whether I'm still on or, okay.
Oh, you're very much on.
Okay, very good. In any case, I'll just quickly say that I hope the community board will stay on top of that. DHS has dropped the ball repeatedly, and was a lot of the problems created a lot of the problems with the transition. And just if Wissfish, if Goddard can keep their eye on those buildings, that's going to be really important. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that wanted to bring the two situations, the changes, and put the one on that was sad first and the one that's glorious second. And I think it's important for the committee and the non-committee board members to be able to explain to others what Valley Lodge is all about, what shelter can be, okay? Because our community, West Side community, has been so split. Their concept of shelter was a horrible, mismanaged city operation of bringing people in large numbers into hotels. And the word shelter got a bad name. So we've known for years of how a shelter can have a good name and be a big asset, not only to the people who are served by it, but the community. And we want you to spread the good word. Okay, I think it's important. Want to thank
Shelley,
Go ahead, please.
if I could hop in, I just want to tell one of my
Please.
favorite stories, which is really just from
Please.
a month or so ago. So since the building opened, I've given a lot of tours of the building, primarily because of the fact that it is this very unique model that's combining both a shelter and permanent housing into one building, which is something that really hasn't happened before. You know, the idea before was that you would cast off shelter into sort of industrial zones or areas that weren't really residential. And so this 108th Street is very unique and really sort of saying shelter should be considered part of the continuum of housing. So I'm there giving a tour, talking about the building, and there's a big lobby, and you have both people from the shelter and people from the permanent housing sitting in the lobby, talking. And so, really at a central casting, it's a raining day, and a new resident arrives at Valley Lodge. So this woman comes in, an older woman who arrives in a car service from a congregate shelter, walks in the door with her 2 garbage bags of stuff, comes through dripping wet, and Karen and her staff come out and essentially begin to welcome her, at which point everyone in the lobby, both residents of the shelter and residents of the permanent housing, stand up and applaud for her as they essentially embrace her and and help escort her into Valley Lodge. And I was all choked up, but I felt like this is really what it's about, is not to sort of say that people who are down on their luck, who need shelter housing temporarily, somehow should be ostracized. They should really be welcomed within our communities as part of sort of the community, the continuum of housing that we want to see in every single neighborhood. So this is my new favorite story. It's really from just a month or so ago, and it's really why we created this model of both permanent and shelter housing in one building.
Okay, and thank you. Yes, and thank you, members of Community Board 7 who voted with this project, because you didn't even begin to understand how wonderful it would be. It was wonderful in what you understood, but I think we need to spread the good word. I want to thank Karen and Paul. Thank you so much for giving your early evening, okay, and really sharing the beauty, the real beauty that's happening up there. And I see everybody has the same reaction. Thank you.
Thank you all very
Okay,
much.
have a good night.
Good night.
Okay, I want to share just with especially Sara, but everyone, going back to the 80s, I was chair of the school board. And what do we do with Booker T? Booker T was supposed to be taken over by the state. That's middle school 54. And because they were on the SIR list, the state under review, school under review in reading and math, which was deadly to be there for both. And that area was considered the drug center of Manhattan, or one of the most drug centers. So what we did is we created the Delta program. 50% of the school would be gifted, highly gifted, as a part of a magnet school. 10 schools were integrated, and that was a magnet school for gifted. And what happened is that parents from 60th Street wanted their kids there. Everyone wanted their kids there. And one of the strategies was to have middle-class parents start to populate the Parents Association and demand of the police that they clean up the area because their kids were going there. At the same time, about the same time, Valley Lodge was open because there was not, except for garbage, the garages, there was no life there. So that was another thing. And then Phil Reed, may he rest in peace, our council person, we implored him to redo the schoolyard and play area and at a big expense. And by doing that, Robert Moses type, you just, the good Robert Moses, you just don't do one thing, you put, various elements of the community together. It largely transformed that area. Okay, now with this, it's so much more. That block was an isolated area. Okay, danger. I wouldn't want to walk down there at night. Okay, most people wouldn't. But now, the only negative comment I've gotten by someone was, "Is that for poor people? Why is it so beautiful?" And I just didn't answer the person. I said, I thought of an answer. We didn't know how to do ugly so well, but thank God. So we so we have a sad situation. We don't know what's going to happen with the future of Help USA on the west side. They don't know for sure that they have a location. At our CAB meeting, which was the last one, they said that they thought within 5 blocks of the other shelter. I said, as soon as you know where, you got to speak to the community, and especially the community on that block in that area. So we're going to keep our eyes open, never go away during the summer because things happen. Okay. And okay, and the last thing we're going to look at, I'm just going to show you again, is what we did last year. Okay, I put in yellow something that we can put in this year, because although food insecurity got #1 rating by our community board, the West Side Campaign Against Hunger wants to expand community-based engagement. Why? Because during the pandemic, they were feeding a good part of the city, okay, from there. And they didn't expand. There were loads of people in the area who needed help. So we actually have a dollar figure, we have an agency, and so on. If any member of the committee or anyone is interested in the areas of food insecurity, homeless outreach, medical health training, mental health training and support, and the capital budget health clinic for abused children, which I think is still good, the broadband for the NYCHA, and the safe haven issues. During the next month, I'm staying home because we have to write our district needs. We have a lot of it in our resolutions, which is good. So it won't be so hard to formulate. But basically the job will be to call agencies to find out specifically, like with Manhattan out, the #3 Manhattan Outreach, which is Goddard Riverside, what they need in terms of more funding for street homeless. Okay, do they have adequate staffing? Okay, what is it a facilities issue? Is it location issues? And we're in terms of speaking to Ryan Health Center, would they be interested in a special clinic for abused children? Speaking to Mount Sinai, speaking to possibly other agencies. We need to be more specific. So when we have the agency and we have an idea of the cost, we can better advocate. My suspicion is that most of our stuff will be the top priorities, because what we do is what people are concerned about, human services and health. So I'm not worried about that. I just want us to be able to be more specific in our presentation, not only because we've been asked to, but because it'll be more effective in advocating. Okay. So I'm not going to put anyone on the spot unless they want to say, I want to do this, but I'll be sending out an email so that everybody has an opportunity, if you have the time and the interest, to do some of that calling and research. Okay. Any other ideas, questions, thoughts, good wishes? No. Okay.
Lots of good wishes.
Good. We need them. I hope for everybody, the summer starts out healthy and safe, and don't light firecrackers or cherry bombs or anything on the roof. You know, it's really dangerous. You know, watch TV, you know. Yeah.
TV is pretty dangerous too sometimes.
Can be.
Depending on what you're watching.
Yeah, but I hope you have a good 4th. Okay, appreciate you coming on. And
thank you, Shelley. We appreciate you for all that you're doing.
That's sweet. Thank you so much. Let me tell you, I'll just tell you something quick about Wistfish. The original culture has lasted now for 43 plus 44 years. The original culture was people try to make people provide housing, give them more independence and a better way of living, not just to survive, but to thrive, especially the elderly. And it was really the people who we hired as staff, many who are now still working, some who have retired, who carried that. And the trick was, our first building was the Marseille. And when the Red Oak opened, we sent a social worker from the Marseille over there. We always sent our staff that was established and could continue and develop the culture to the next building. So it infused a way of thinking, including among our maintenance staff and porters. They're concerned, there's always exceptions, but most people are concerned about the well-being and the health and all the needs of the people. And it's unusual. It's unusual. Laura Jervis, who was our founding executive director, was the epitome of all that good stuff. And she set the tone and just kept going. Now we have almost 500 employees, okay, which is significant in itself. 31 buildings. We expected to have one. We're doing one. And the good stuff keeps coming. And but through the years, the support of the community board, whenever we've had a ULURP or an issue, has been amazing, and the community. But I think the strongest ones were when we had resistance. The Euclid Hall in '86, we had demonstrations in the street against people. I was hit over the head by a woman with a heavy pocketbook. You don't live here, you live uptown.
Was that Ruth Buzzy by any chance?
What's that?
I'm sorry.
What? No.
I'm sorry. I just had to say something funny.
Yeah.
I apologize. It's not funny.
No, but really, that there were a lot of hostile things, but community board always supported what we did. And the reason I wanted to bring them out today, one is because Valley Lodge in the new setting is unique in the United States. You don't put shelters, even if they're transitional shelters, in an apartment complex, okay? And what happens is amazing. Sometimes the Valley Lodge shelter people may look a little less well-dressed possibly, but people in the lobby, people speak to one another. They say hi to one another. It's a normalizing experience. And if you're going to make a transition and you're in an isolated situation, then you have to come to a more congregate situation. It's not easy, but here there's a gentle, gradual transition. And I think as Karen said, we have so many buildings with so many different types of populations and purposes that we can house most of our transitional shelter people in our own buildings. So we don't have to go begging to the city or to somebody else. So the system works now. But to be honest, all of us had no idea this would happen. It wasn't the plan. The plan was to have one building and to provide supportive senior housing, and then it evolved. But we have really amazing people like Karen, who, 1 in a million. And Valley Lodge, by the way, is considered the national model for transitional shelter. So we're very proud. But without people like her and the staff that she develops, I don't know how you do this. Even if you have the building, even you can have the money, you can have all those things. And
it's really amazing what you've done.
Grateful. What's that?
It's really amazing what you and your team have done. It's really
they are
quite a
they are
testament.
terrific. Okay.
Shelley, how long have you been involved with this?
Okay, in 1977, when we had no buildings, I was on a committee, a resident committee for the future Marseille. And I was it was organizational representation then, but in 1979, the board became individuals, and I was on that board. in 79. I was in 83, I became secretary of the board, and later on, I think vice president. In 2000, John Cowell, who was a member of the community board and became a good friend, passed away. And the board asked me to take his place as the chair, as the president of the organization and president of the board. And he was a real inspiration. Terrific. I met such wonderful people. By the way, I had trouble with most of the people when I first got on because they were very experienced in these fields, and they were willing to stab you in the back if it was for a good purpose. So I was naive. I was young, so I thought we're doing this, and then I found out we're doing that. But eventually, when you work together with people and you have the same goals, everything comes together. And if we didn't love each other, we respected each other. But right now we have an amazing board. On our board over the years have been some of the greatest people, including, she's not well now, the former head of HPD, okay, in the Bloomberg and Giuliani administrations, and we've had people who are they're heads of foundations, but they're people who roll up their sleeves in the community. You know, nobody is, there are no prima donnas, okay, or prima donnels either. Everybody, you know, everybody is like community oriented. And that's what you hear at our board meetings. It's not, except for the financial stuff, it's not a normal board meeting. It's what do we need to do here? What can we do there? What's going on? You know, it's always how it can be done better. I'll share with you something before we get off. We have a program, Pro Health and Fitness, which went into the 74th Street home and worked with people. In addition to exercise and balance, you know, and things like that. They have exercises that help your kidney, help your heart, help your ears, feet, okay, which are, the person in charge has a doctorate in this stuff. It's research-based. And we moved that to Euclid Hall on 86th Street. We had it in Cowell House on 106th Street. And we may be moving it now into Valley Lodge. And they have a very lucrative business on the east side and the west side. But even though it's not in their financial interest, they take Medicaid, which pays very little, and they do the same work they do with wealthy patients and people with better insurance. And this came from someone I knew when I was in rehab in 2007, when I was chair of the board. I got into a motorcycle accident on the way to the board meeting. Okay, after trying to make our rezoning work, I was crossing the street. I got hit by a motorcycle. Okay, and it was a Sunday night, and we were supposed to have an emergency meeting, and I had all the papers. They went up in the air with the agreement to settle the rezoning conflicts. We spent 4 hours with different agencies, and it went up in the air, and I went up in the air. I thought it was all over. I saw white light and all that came down on my spine. I couldn't move. And what happened, someone from who I was mentoring, we had a mentor program. Okay, I was chair of the board. We had a mentor program. The person I was mentoring showed up at the hospital late in the evening. I was immobile. And I said to him, go to City Hall and tell them 15 stories. There was one piece we hadn't done. And he did. In the morning, the zoning committee of the city council, they were cursing each other out and they got nothing done. He came and he said, they said, how is Shelley? I don't know. He looks paralyzed. I wasn't, but I look paralyzed. And, but he kept on saying 15 stories, tell them 15 stories. someone called the chair of the board and said, we have to do 15 stories. The chair of the board said yes. The city said yes. And they went into the land use and voted unanimously for the changes we put together. It was better. I was the sacrifice there. And it worked and we got it done somehow. But this is the crazy way things happen. And what happened is Gail Brewer got me a van, took me to the city council, sat me on the floor of the city council. And Inez Dickens, how many people know Inez Dickens? She was a council member from one of the council members. She's an assemblywoman from Holland, who was a good friend. She came and got down on her knees and started crying and kissing my hand because she had told me that they were going on a political junket. And that's why we had to have the Sunday night meeting, because they were meeting on Monday in land use. And I said, it's not your fault. This guy came along with a motorcycle and hit me. And then other people came over thinking that if someone who was the majority whip of the council was getting down on her knees and crying, that they had to come over and do something. It was a riot. It was like, I wish I had a film of this. Anyone know Charles Barron? Who Charles Barron is? Okay, he was a councilman at that time. I knew him from 25 years ago from something else. He came over, came down, gave me a chest bump. Other people came over, and once they got finished, they voted 51-0 on the to support our rezoning, and we lived happily ever after. By the way, that rezoning, there was never anything built because everybody wanted to build high and massive. Right now, the first building is being built on 103rd Street. It's only 13 stories on the avenue because they can't build more than 12 unless they're giving affordable housing. And they transferred it to Project Find in another place. So they got one floor, but it worked. The system worked. We went block to block, lot to lot. And we found out if this is the avenue, you know, either side is one avenue, and this is the mid block. If all of it was R8, but we made the avenues R8A and the mid block R8B, and you can't transfer air rights across different lots. And R8A and R8B are different. We chopped up the zoning on the whole neighborhood from 97th to 110th. And who certified it? Well, it was our idea, our board. But I convinced the board, we have to let city planning certify it. They said, but it's ours. I said, if they certify it, they're going to approve it. So let them take it over, okay? And with it, we got use of their electronic imagings that they could, you know, show the heights and the zoning and everything, things we didn't have resources for. And when we actually went before city planning, we knew the people and they voted unanimously for their plan, okay? And so it's a history, but it's fascinating how this all developed. But this is when the board was willing to work together. And the other thing we did that was unique was I brought in people to the task force who were not members of the board, who were active in the community, leading the anti-development, overdevelopment group. And they brought out literally, and you can ask anyone, I'm not exaggerating, 700 to 800 people showed up to our meeting, almost all in support of what we were doing. And city planning saw it, and they never saw anything like it before. And one of those people was Mickey Fiegel, who was on the board for a while. Okay. And she was a part of the West Siders for something development, responsible development. And we got some politically, and the long and short is that it worked because the community was with us and we didn't exclude them, you know, exclude them. Yeah. So I'm going to wish you all a good night. Happy Independence Day. Please think about coming to July 11th meeting, which is going to be the task force on our, how we're going to do our meetings, but it's probably going to be a full board type thing because we need to make a statement about what we're doing. So forewarned is forearmed. Everyone have a safe and good. And I hope when you're not doing Community Board 7, that your summer is delightful. And when you are, it's not too bad.
Good night,